Welcome to the Mental Advantage Podcast. Whether you're an athlete trying to perform at your best when it counts the most, a coach or business leader trying to get more out of your team, or someone looking for more personal growth, this is the place for you. This podcast is your map to guide you to the right mindset, systems, and strategies you need to become the best version of yourself. And now, here's John Cullen and Brandon Allen.
All right, welcome into the show. We have a great one tonight. Adam Moseley, head baseball coach at Hoover High School in Hoover, Alabama. For those of you listening that were not around in the mid-2000s when Two-A-Days was on and Hoover
MTV.
High School was such a big deal, that is just outside of Birmingham. It's kind of on the outskirts of Birmingham, Alabama, but great tradition down there. I mean, one of the things – and we don't get into this with Coach Moseley, but one of the things I would say about Hoover reminds me a little bit of the high school I went to, by the way, and just the championship culture, just a lot of winning, you know.
Oh, brother, here we go.
But there does become this, you know, when you talk about building culture, and we do get into that with Mose. One of the things is, you know, it does help when there's a culture that's already kind of established there a little bit.
For sure. But I'll tell you, like, I'm a big Mose fan after having an opportunity to speak with him. You know, the area, you know, my family's from kind of around a little bit, so very familiar with that area. And, they've, no pun intended, when they hired Mose, you know, it was a home run hire, brought him down from Huntsville, and, you know, great guy, competitor. He's got a little dog in him. He got a little blood in his mouth. Yeah. And I love that. But, I think what the listeners are going to be able to hear tonight is, you know, he has a real passion for those kids and for the game. And when those two things kind of come together, you know, you typically have really successful coaches. And what typically that means is that you're also producing really successful young men and women to come out and do their thing. And, we're lucky to have him on the show, and Hoover's lucky to have him in their halls. So
absolutely. No, I mean, you're talking about a guy that, you know, 457 wins in his head coaching career in high school. You know, I was looking at some of the stats on him from a coaching perspective: 21 all-state players, 86 players that go on and play in college, 7 Major League Baseball draft picks, including a first rounder. They've had, just at Hoover, because of course he was at Grissom, like you said, in Huntsville before that, but at Hoover, he's had 3 state final appearances, 2017 state champs. I mean, the guy, and then on top of that, and he's got, and we talked to him about this, but he's got this unique perspective as a coach, because he's doing his job, his root, you know, his everyday job there at Hoover High School, but then also as a, you know, coach for USA Baseball, Team USA, right. And been, you know, the pitching coach, 2022 pitching coach for World Championship 18U USA national team. I mean, you know, and the 15U in 2018, I meant to ask him a little bit about that, and that, you know, I would imagine if you just do the math on that,
it's the same kids,
you know, so it's smart from USA Baseball perspective.
100.
Because the relationships are there.
100%, right? And he gets into that a little bit in terms of relationship, and you and I talk about it a lot on the podcast. You know, at the end of the day, relationships are everything.
It's
right?
it.
I mean, it's you know, it's why that you and I, you know, this is going on 30 years,
right? And
I love you to death, and relationships matter, and he's a guy that pours into those and gives into those, and it's really cool, and it's really neat to hear him brag on his kids and his program, and he's done a tremendous job. And certainly deserves to do that.
Yeah, so good. So you're going to learn a lot from this one. Get your pen and paper ready. Here is Adam Moseley. Well, as you heard from the introduction there, we've got Adam Moseley from Hoover High School, head baseball coach. Adam, thanks for joining us tonight.
It's great to be here. Appreciate you guys having me.
You know, Coach, when I was going through kind of some of the research, I was thinking about this, and I don't think I'm probably that far off on this, but I would say Hoover High School, along with like St. Thomas Aquinas, LaSalle, some of those, Hoover, because of two-a-days, right? Back in the day, It's got to be one of the most famous high schools in the country. I mean, I think people probably know where you are when you mention that, right?
I think that's right. It's when they called me, I knew who Hoover was, obviously. But it's two-a-days brought it to definitely to a place where people know a lot about us, and then the travel baseball world now is all coming through here. If you're east of the Mississippi and really east of Texas, you're probably coming here to play at some point. And so it's I heard somebody say the other day, one of our city leaders, that our name recognition might even be greater right now because of that than it is from two-a-days. And that's kind of hard to believe. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So Coach, does that help you at all? Like, is that bringing talent into the high school? Or
I would love to say it was helping just Hoover, but I think, here in Birmingham, I was talking to a local high school coach about it the other day. It's maybe the best talent base I've ever seen in Birmingham. Like this year, this high school baseball there's a lot of really, really good teams, and it's because people want to be around here. You don't have to go very far if you live here to get great baseball competition all year round, and really great competition in every sport that you might want to play.
Well, speaking of that, I think I saw, Brandon, where Coach had like 6 seniors. Is it this year that are going on and playing baseball at a 4-year school somewhere? We
do. We have 6 that will go play right now, and I think 3 more actually will commit and sign somewhere. And it's a class of real depth for us. But again, man, like we've got 6, and the 2 schools down the road have each got 5. And it's just kind of the nature of the beast right now. A little bit of the SEC West of high school athletics.
Well, I tell you what, I have through work, through the day job, have spent a lot of time in that Hoover, Birmingham area, Hoover in particular. And it's it's really, really nice area. I think the facilities and everything you guys got going on down there are fantastic, and had to probably play a big role in you leaving and, coming from Grissom down to take that opportunity down there at Hoover, huh?
It certainly did, honestly. The facilities are great. The area is beautiful. The community is about maybe some different things than what it looks like. When you on the way in, maybe you think it's it's kind of about just glitz and glamour or something along those lines. And it's really a very family-oriented place. And the facilities don't hurt that family-oriented status.
Yeah.
For me to come here is really, I think anybody who's married interviews for a job, your wife probably makes the decision for you. and when she saw the baseball facilities, it certainly didn't hurt that she knew we were going to have a newborn. She could sit in a nice coach's office and watch games, not have to be freezing your tail off.
Right. That's not a bad part of the gig for sure. Well, you have had, and the listeners heard a little bit there during that introduction. Here's somebody who is, coaching at the high school level now, but in addition to your time there at Hoover High School, you've also been tremendously involved in USA baseball over the last, 5, 6, 7 years. What was it did you know early on coaching is going to be where your future was? Did you have some influence that pushed you that way? What was it?
Yeah. It wasn't necessarily like a specific person. I think it was more about, I knew early on that how coaches made me feel and the impact I knew they were having on me was something that I wanted to maybe have a chance to have on other people. And I knew when I was in high school that I wanted to be a coach. And so it actually affected where I chose to go to college. My choices were, it's not like I had a long list of them, but I walked on in college, but I walked on because it was at Birmingham Southern, because it was a place that, I'd gone to camp there. I knew how the camps were run, which was a very good indicator of what the program was going to be like. And I thought, I want to be around this more often because I think it'll eventually make me a good coach one day.
Well, you brought up about that, how it made you feel. I'm a big believer and the listeners have heard me say this before, where, and you can use this in a lot of different aspects of life, but people tend to not remember what you say, but they'll definitely remember how you made them feel.
No doubt.
And I think that's one of the things that I'm happy to hear you say that from a coaching perspective, and you had some great influences. You mentioned college. I mean, at Birmingham Southern College, where you went to school, you're talking about Butch Thompson being there. Brian Shoup was the head coach. Darren Schoenrock was the one of the assistant coaches, as well as Coach Thompson. And I'm thinking to myself, that's not a bad list of names. I mean, these are guys that went on to be legendary coaches at their schools. I mean, Coach Thompson's still doing it there at Auburn. What was it? Do you remember the things that you picked? I'm sure there was a bunch you could list. You could probably spend an hour just talking about that. But was there anything about that experience that really shaped you as the coach you are now?
Yeah, I think it's funny because a lot of people today will talk about that. The people who knew each other from Birmingham Southern back then or played together, you guys are like a cult or whatever. And in some ways we kind of are, I guess, because the things that Coach Shoup would do were, before process oriented was even the popular thing. That's who he was. He's going to do our process that we're going to do. And I think he was just stealing from Coach Polk and people like that. He started with Coach Polk, and so we got an introduction to what it was like to play for Coach Polk, without the cigars or anything like that. But you learn that kind of thing, and then his ability to relate to players, his ability to take on tough, challenging topics with his team, and he's a strong believer in Jesus and loved talking about it. And there were so many opportunities to learn about Jesus or about baseball or just about how to be a real man. And I think, today we're missing real men in our society, and there's not as many as there used to be, at least. And he was one, and you look at his coaching tree is pretty amazing. And, it's kind of fun to be even maybe like a little leaf on a limb of his coaching tree.
So Coach, you've experienced it. John and I have seen it as well. I still coach at a 14U level, 15U now, I guess, this summer. But the anxiety, the just change, like you mentioned, young men today are completely different. Mm-hmm. And I know I think one of the challenges is every generation has a shift. Right. Everybody kind of goes, well, we were different. Well, yeah, you were. But now this will be my 45th year, 46th year, either playing or coaching.
Oh, I thought you were going to say coaching. That's been a long time.
Yeah. But
he looks good for his age. He always lies about that.
but the thing is like, this one feels real. You know what I mean? Like the shift feels different. How do you deal with that, and how has that affected your coaching style?
Well, I think kids are different, but they're also very much the same. I think they're attracted maybe even more to structure and even more to discipline once you teach them that it is attractive and it's not just me, some drill sergeant screaming in your ear or something like that, but instead it's presenting, the picture that, these things can lead to better things in the future for you. But, you're, in my eyes, you're either about kids or you're not. You either believe in kids or you don't. And if you believe in kids and you're about kids and their development and that sort of thing, then I think it lends to how you relate to kids. And, relationship's still the name of the game. And you got to get to know your players. And you got to get to know your kids. And that's why, some of these guys that coach but don't teach, that's just a foreign concept to me. I'm not teaching them. I'm not out there setting the world on fire teaching. We're not doing AP in my class or anything like that. But you got to be in the hallways and get to know the kids, and you got to want to be there, and I think that's a big separator is the people who you can just tell, the guys and girls, ladies who came into this business because they love kids and they're about kids, or the ones who maybe tried something else and then realized, I can't do that. So let me try teaching or coaching.
Right. It's funny you mentioned relationships, because that was one of the things that really stood out to me as I was researching for this show is, going through some old clips and different YouTube. I mean, nothing's gone, right? I mean, you can't hide from online research, but I tell you what, you had a lot of good stuff, and I would encourage, the listeners to look up Adam Moseley, and you're going to have to say Adam Moseley baseball, because I found out there's a dude that's like an artist or something that anytime you put Adam Moseley in the search, it comes up. It's like this guy is like, he's like 70 or 80. He's got a long beard, but
that's my alter ego.
Exactly. But you talked a lot in some of these videos about, that importance of relationships, not only with the players, but with the parents, and establishing that. And I think one of the things now, I mean, Brandon brought up our coaching background. I mean, I coached at the high school and college level, and most recently at the high school level. And I will say that I got out of it partly because it just got so exhausting with the parents. And we've seen, I think, an evolution over the last however many years, whether it's referees getting out of it, officials getting out of it, whether it's coaches getting out of it, because of that adversarial relationship with parents. But one of the things I was impressed about your content online is how much you embrace it. And you talk about start establishing the groundwork by don't make that first phone call to them be when you're telling them that Tommy had some issue at practice. Make it about you saying, hey, we're really excited to have Tommy on the team this year, and here's a couple of things we're really noticing him doing well. This is where we could really use your support.
Yeah, no, I think it's worked for us to do it that way, for me to do it that way. And I think it goes back to why you're doing it. I don't need, and I want our program to be the ones who are responsible for the kid, turning into become a brain surgeon or a janitor.
Right.
We just want to be part of the process. And I think when you give up kind of needing to be right all the time, which I definitely used to need to be right all the time. And I don't care to be right. I just care that we get the most out of the kid and the best, most out of the relationship with whatever that family is. And you do have to hit it head on. And if you're scared of parents, it just doesn't make sense in my brain to say, hey, please give us money to help support our program, and then go, no, but don't talk to me. I don't, I just don't, it's not for me. And some people love it. That's how they want to do it. And that's okay. But, I made a commitment a long time ago. We're going to live in the community where we coach. And some people think that's crazy. And some days I think it's crazy too. If I'm going to Publix and I'm getting some avocados and some bananas and somebody's throwing them at me. Well, I guess I probably made the wrong decision. But
hey, coach, you got a minute? Yeah,
right.
Hey, listen,
come over here. Let me pick out, this I don't know, knife or whatever. But.
And when they miss, is that when you're like, and that's why he doesn't?
Right, exactly. Like same problem your son had. Arm side high. Gosh, but now
they now block. Yeah.
And my kids are going to go to school around here, and do go to school around. My daughter's going to be in high school next year, and that'll be a weird thing. I mean, it just is one of those deals where, again, if you're about kids and you're about development of human beings, really, then you just kind of want to be a part of it, not necessarily be adversarial about it, at least in my eyes.
Brandon usually talks about this at some point during these interviews we have with coaches, especially because he has that unique experience of still being in it. But, social media, right, has had such a big change in the way that it is with young players. I loved on your Twitter, this just made me laugh. Early in November, you made a comment. Is there anything greater than entertainment than social media hot takes during and after a college football Saturday, which is
unbelievable.
It's like all the experts.
I wish they do like in the big games, they got the war room of coaches that are doing their analyzing things. I wish one coach would go at halftime of big games, or even during the whole game while it's going on, one program would put one guy to the side, live tweeting the advice and saying, watch me give this to the coach and see what he says. It'd be awesome. All you got to do is throw it to 24 and he's wide open.
Every time.
I saw something the other day where Kirby Smart had gotten interviewed and it was a blogger, and he says, hey, coach, who made the call on 4th and 2 or whatever? And he's like, I did. What are you talking about? And the guy said, oh, okay. He goes, well, like what was going on over the headsets during that time? And he goes, well, you don't pay enough to understand what's going on over the headsets. It's just like, we've provided this thing where it's great to have access to things you've never had before, knowledge that you've never had before. And somehow or another, we have made it into this thing where it's just a hype machine. And even the kids, like I had a conversation with my team last year, Coach, where it was like everybody, when we played a team, everybody knew who everybody's PG rating was, right?
Yes.
And it's like,
yes.
guys, I told him, I said, look, I could go out on our roster and I could say that y'all have all committed to Vandy. And I said, and we can all go pay that money and get you ranked. But it doesn't, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who's on the other side. We're playing a game, and either you can execute or you can't. And we have, to your point, a process, and we have things that we're trying to accomplish. I don't care if they know we're going to steal right here. I don't care if they know we're going to bunt right here. I just need you to execute. And but that whole chasing that jock, because it's like, oh, dude, we're playing. I mean, we played a team that had like 3 of the top 10 over the last summer, and they're like, oh, dude, he's the number 1 rated shortstop in Georgia. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, let's hit him in the ribs 4 times. Didn't do anything. Like, what do you want?
It's hard for kids too. If you're that guy, like just speaking from experience, watching these guys with USA this summer, and you got the Max Clarks of the world, the Bryce Eldridges of the world, and it's hard for them to separate what's real and what's fake, and that maybe the most important role that a male role model has in those young men's lives is to tell them, hey man, this is great and all, but here's what's the most important for you to make you successful as you go. And what you'll find, at least in my experience, is guys like that, the vast majority of them just want people around them who want to be real with them and teach them real things. Right. Because they figure it out. Kids are smart. They know what's good and what's not.
Gosh, poor Max. It feels like Max is on people leverage that poor kid to get clicks all the time.
Hey, no doubt. Because it happens for whatever kid you're talking about. If he has a good game on social media, it's someone's responsibility that he had the good game, whoever it might be. Like, hey, he came to this camp one time, or he drank water from my Gatorade cup one time, or whatever it is. And it's just, those kids, nobody's taking responsibility for them when they fail, though. That's the problem. Nobody's defending them when they fail. Nobody's reaching out for them and taking the bullet for them when they fail. They're really just trying to jump on the back when they have success. And that's the missing piece a lot of times in my eyes.
No, you nailed it. And, you brought up something with USA Baseball, and I wanted to kind of touch on something that we had. So you have that unique perspective that, during the regular season, you're coaching the high school players, and you kind of, you get what you get, right? I mean, these are the guys that live within a certain proximity of your high school, and this is your roster, but then in the summertime, you've got some of the best talent that we have in the high school ranks period in the country are playing on Team USA. And so you have that perspective. And, it's interesting. We had Jack Leggett on our show, I don't know, a few months ago, and we were asking Coach about the fact that, he's dealing with that same unique perspective now, because he coaches or is around his grandsons who are playing travel ball. And then he goes and coaches with Team USA. And I asked him, from your lens that you're getting this unique perspective at, what do you think we're doing right that you see in the game today, and that especially with that young age, and what do you think we could be doing better?
Wow. Well, I do think, the animus or animosity, I guess, that is developing between high school and travel club, however you want to term it, is wrong. Like it just, it's silly, and it's people who want to exist in these blanket statements, you have to do this, you have to do that. Like I'm walking away from that conversation because it's just not true.
Right.
There's never a, blanket statement that applies, but I think we're creating opportunities for kids, and that's good. And we're creating opportunities for kids that can harness some things and really, create opportunities for themselves later in life that none of us ever had the opportunity to experience. But, putting some guidelines and some rails on it has become a little bit of a problem. And just speaking truth into kids is harder than ever, because you can always go find somebody to tell you something that,
right.
may not be the right thing, but at least makes them feel good.
Right.
And it's still going to come back to a relationship that you have to have with a kid of, hey, he'll really listen to you. Like I literally, before I went to dinner just a little while ago, my players in there and I'm walking through and they go, Coach, who's better between this guy and this guy? And they knew I had them at PDP League this summer and all that stuff. And it just depends on the setting and, who's pouring into them. And, they're talking about this guy had this many home runs, this guy had this many strikeouts. That's great that you know all that stuff, but would he work here? I don't know. Maybe he wouldn't work here. Maybe he'd work there. It's really about, I think, creating some guardrails or guidelines on these kids that maybe they're missing right now in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think the average fan doesn't, and probably even the average player doesn't appreciate that the higher you go in talent, whether you're working with Team USA, you're working with college players, you're working with those professional athletes, the more they hunger for that feedback. We talk about this all the time.
About that.
We talk about this all the time on the show, is that when I used to work a lot of camps, for example, I can remember, working at University of Virginia's baseball camps, and you'd get prospects from all over the country, and they would come in, and the best ones, the ones that everyone was talking about before they got there, were always the ones after every drill would turn around and be like, Coach, what'd you see there? What could I be doing? And then you'd see the guy that really wasn't, he probably just paid the fee and just wanted to be there or whatever for the experience. He'd just go in and get his 10 hacks in, as fast as he possibly could, finish the drill as fast as he could, and to be done. And you'd never ask you one single thing about it. And it always amazed me, from just seeing that. It's like, you hit it on the head, is that they just want truth,
That's it.
But that curiosity also identifies passion.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, that's when you've got a guy that you're going, okay, he might be a little different. Like, because you get those kids, like talent. I mean, you hate to hear it or hate to say it, but I was telling the guy the other day, I've never been around more talented baseball players ever. However, I've also, in the same breath, could tell you I've never been around more fundamentally baseball IQ negligent players ever. Yes. I mean, swings, velo, all the stuff, all the tangibles, all the stuff that people are promoting, they got it. But you ask them what to do on first to third, and they're going, what? Huh? What?
Yeah. No doubt. Well, it's one of those things that you can kind of harness. We're talking about social media. You can harness social media in a lot of ways with your players to teach that, and develop that relationship and create almost the baseball nerd. Twitter is, for whatever Elon Musk has done with it, great. Like it or not, it doesn't matter to me. But there's so many great pieces of content. Now, don't post anything on baseball Twitter. You're going to get crushed by somebody.
Sure.
But you get something like one of our top pitchers today. I saw one drill that I 2 nights ago that I thought, man, this could really help him. So I sent it to him. And we're talking about it today, and I see him working on it over the corner, just trying to, try that out. And it's like, he knows that you're thinking about him, trying to create some truth for him. And he will appreciate that in the long run. And eventually it's going to come back. And I've had players many times send, a clip, hey, Coach, do you think this would work for me? And, you have to be able to have that conversation. Use social media to do it if that's what you have to do. But at the end of the day, it is about, who's speaking truth to those kids and who's not.
And you guys both kind of were around this idea of social media and that influence it has on players, especially from a comparative perspective. And one of the things I think, Mose, that does is it creates this, results focused mentality. I mean, Brandon and I, of course, by virtue of our podcast, are really focused on that mental side of the game. And it's something we've talked about before. And you played college ball a little bit right after we got done. We were in the early 90s, you were in the mid 90s. And one of the things we always say is that, we were probably doing some of these things back then. We just didn't call it some of the things they're calling it now. We didn't focus, we didn't say it was a focus on the mental game or didn't have mental performance coaches or any of that stuff. But I was curious, I think that has a big impact, though, that social media, because they feel like if I don't perform, if I don't go 3 for 3, if I'm supposed to be one of the best in Alabama in your situation with some of the players you have, and, what are people going to think of me or whatever? How much is that topic something that you're starting to have to deal with now as a high school coach has been doing it for a while versus when you first started, like where you're getting into the confidence discussions, the dealing with adversity, dealing with pressure? Is that something you're even seeing more and more talk about more and more? 100%.
It's something that, when I started in 2000 and 4 or 5, whatever it was, as a head coach, what you saw at the game is what you saw. And yeah. I remember we started videoing games, 3-4 years into me being a head coach, and people thought we were nuts. And then social media gets really rolling. And now, a kid may have the best game he's ever had. And the one social media clip that goes out there is not even about the kid from your game. And so our job in a lot of ways is to make sure that kid is recognized, but also to be a defender of the kid and his mindset. When that kind of stuff does happen, it comes back to, do they know what's real in their life and what's not real, and social media is, you can see it's gone. And there's so many, it's gone so fast. And there's so many guys I know who have gone to play at other places. Like we had a pitcher who went to LSU, and he helped LSU in the College World Series. And then the next year, he's not having a great year, and he is getting blown up on social media, and to the point of I think he essentially ended up just deleting accounts because it's why put this let this keep feeding my brain, and people are going to take it and go with it however they want to go with it. It's where that, being real and being in those kids' lives and defending them as much as you can really comes into play.
Yeah, it is unbelievable, the impact. And I don't think people, you talked about those keyboard warriors earlier and all the guys on football Saturdays, but it's like we've just become the society of catching you doing it wrong, right? Everything is all about that guy that will probably never get a shot to go and extend his, time after high school. We only played up until the end of Little League or whatever the case may be. It's so quick to just go in on some high school shortstop for booting a ball or, not having a clutch hit in the later innings. And it's just and you have to pick your battles, right? Because sometimes we give power to the people we acknowledge on social media as well. I always remember the Aaron Rodgers line, "Kill him with indifference." Somebody said, and I loved it because it's true. It's the best thing you can do a lot of times is just be indifferent about it. But it's easy for us as adults to say that, but for those young kids, and then we turn around and wonder why they're quitting the game, why they're, in this case, quitting social media, but why they have these confidence issues is because they are listening to all that stuff. It does mean something to them when they're seeing stuff, talked about on social media.
It does, coming out of the COVID situation doesn't help. Those kids spent so much time in virtual wonderland at that point for a while. And that some of these guys, we're still not at a point, nobody is, where they've got a senior class who didn't deal with COVID. They've all dealt with it still. And kill them with indifference is right. One of my favorite stories to tell our kids, you have to kind of make it G-rated. But, when Tom Herman got the job at Texas and the assistant coach at Texas was just crushing him for doing all the stuff that he said he did. And he went through this whole long list. Back then it wasn't a thread, but now it would be a thread, a Twitter thread or whatever, all these things. And Tom Herman's response was, "Okay, cool, hook them." Like, hey man, I got the job. I'm moving on. You do what you got to do. And it was awesome. Like, and I wear that shirt around there, and kids, I have a T-shirt that says, "Okay, cool, hook 'em." I'll wear it around sometimes, and they're like, "What is it, Coach? What?" And I thought you're not a Texas fan. And I explained it. They're like, "Oh, okay, gotcha." So,
well, I love that. I love that a lot. That's it's one of those things that, we talk about culture, and we talk about how you can, everybody has like the signs on the wall and the pillars, whatever the case would be. It seems like everybody's got enough posters and stuff around their locker rooms now. But it's the importance of modeling that as a coach. Yep. And you just made me think about that as in Tom Herman's situation is, if you want your people to play with that, kind of freeness and just be not concerned about everybody else, then you have to model that as a coach, right? And that becomes, okay, cool, hook 'em, right? I mean, it's like, yeah, that's great,
You have to model that, and I'm probably not the best model. Sometimes I get after people, but I want them first to know that they're going to always be defended by their head coach. But
yeah, for sure.
Second, you want them to know that they just play for the guys that are on the field with you, and that's probably the thing that separates high school sports still with club sports, because there's so much. Club sports are so transitory that they're changing all the time. But high school, it's the kids a lot of times you grew up with. And there should be comfort in that, like knowing that I know where my second baseman lives, and I know where my shortstop, where he likes to eat, or all those things that create, development or develop a great team. And I think that's a part of it that, you have to foster that as a head coach. And when those things start to take off and develop on their own, you got to recognize it happening and trust kids again, to just trust them to do the right thing with it, whatever that might be.
No, I think you're spot on there. So when we talk about culture, it's something that we've dedicated lots of different shows to. Was there lessons you had learned from your time early as a coach at Grissom to then when you came down to Hoover that you felt like, okay, this was the culture we had here, but maybe this is, I want to kind of shape this a little bit. I'm sure it's something that's continually evolving, but was there a particular type of Hoover high school player you wanted that to look like? I mean, from a culture standpoint.
Yeah, it really, I think the first lesson, it's the only time I've ever changed jobs as a head coach, which some other guys have changed a lot. I'm lucky to not have had to do that. But the first lesson was actually not maybe hammering home what I thought the exact culture needed to be, because I had competed against Hoover for a long time. And in Huntsville, we had a bunch of engineers kids, and they kind of need to be related to maybe a little differently in a lot of ways, like very step by step. And here's what is the process to create the 90-mile-an-hour arm or whatever. Here's the steps. Okay, cool. I can do those steps, and let's go. Yeah. And the parents understood it that way. And here, I think I have like 2 engineers kids, and so it's a different thing. Being at Hoover, it's literally, hey, what do you need to be successful, and how can we help you do that? And which is great. I mean, there's value in both processes and both thought processes. But coming here was more trying to kind of almost learn the culture that's currently here, to then try to start shaping it. And if I could do that first year over again, I would spend even more time learning, hey, what makes Hoover Hoover? And then I know what makes a successful baseball player. How do I marry those two thought processes? Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it was putting a square peg in a round hole, but at the same time, it's also like, some of the value structures were different, not in a bad way. They're just a little bit different. You have to learn those before you maybe try to influence.
Well, culture is such a unique thing. And I mean, it even changes, right, from team to team. I mean, the culture stays the same, but sometimes do you have the leadership from the kids? You'll never change as a coach in terms of what's important to you. But, the thing that I've always found is it's great to be kind of directed by the coach, but it's got to be player led, right?
No doubt.
And so that culture tends to have a little bit of a sliding scale, because you may not have that leader that is vocal and really holds everybody accountable. And so even each team has to understand that, hey, our standard doesn't change. The way we implement it or practice it may change a little bit, right? Yep. And that's really difficult. I know personally, I find that to be an extremely challenging thing to not put my foot in there immediately, right? And be like, no,
right,
this is what we're doing. But you're right. You got to breathe a little bit. It's tough as a coach.
Yeah. When I got here or when I came to interview here, I thought everybody the houses right around the school here are really, really nice, like really nice.
Yeah.
And A, I knew I couldn't afford one, but B, I was like, hey, everybody in Hoover must live in that kind of house. So I thought, silver spoon and, all those things that you think on the outside looking in. And then you get here, and I thought when I got on the way in, I'm like, man, I got to teach these kids to work hard and grind and whatever words you want to use for that. And come to find out, they worked their tail off. Like, that didn't need to be taught at all. Like maybe, like you said, let it breathe a little bit, influence some culture, here's some standards, et cetera. And then I come to find out, my third year here, we're making a run at a state championship, and I hear the kids break it down one day. They're like, JYD. I go, man, what in the world is that? And one of my seniors, who I'm still really close to this day, says, Coach, we just a bunch of junkyard dogs.
Junkyard dogs, baby.
And I'm like, okay, now you got me. Like, I played, we want to start playing junkyard dog theme music and all that stuff. They didn't care about all that, but it was awesome because that was the culture of that team.
Right.
And that's what it had turned into.
It's a sign of a great leader, Coach, when you can adapt to that. I think this is a great lesson for those of you listening to the show right now. And we have all different types. I mean, coaches and business leaders and stuff, is when you're taking over a team, fight that instinct to come in and just create everything, change everything for change's sake. Sometimes it's already working, or you might just have to shape something, or you might. And I think one of the things that really stood out to me about what you just said was, be interested in what is working, like be interested enough to ask the questions and seek to understand. To your point, let me not just judge this on the fact that because, everybody must be, silver spoon mentality here, but you let it all kind of evolve and you started to ask some questions and let's see before you start passing judgment. And had you not, it could have been a completely different first 2 or 3 years, because that would have taken a little bit of time. I mean, you frustrate a lot of players when, they think that you are having to motivate them every step along the way. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about tonight was, and I think this is really cool. You have an opportunity this year in January. I think I'm still not decided whether I'm going to be able to make it. It's here in Nashville, so I'll at least be down. You'll see me, I'm sure, at some point around that weekend in January for the ABCA Convention. But you're going to be doing a general session talk. Pretty cool. Is that your first one?
Yeah. I kind of had to sit down when they called me. I'm like, man, you sure you got the right number?
You're not looking for the artist?
There's a realtor. If you're looking for a house, his name's Adam Moseley.
Yeah. But your talk subject really caught my attention when they sent out the topics for this year's ABCA was competitive DNA, developing a winning pitching program. Talk to us, without giving away too much for those that are showing up at ABCA, but what does that mean, that competitive DNA? Because, of course, that's one of the things we're always as coaches challenged with is what happened to the competitors, right? Where's the, that competitive spirit? So what do you mean by that?
Well, there's a couple of things that, that'll be maybe highlights of what I'm going to talk about, but also just, I think, our universal truths. We've talked a lot about process, and that's where the kind of if you're looking at cliche buzzwords of maybe the past 10 years for coaches, process oriented would be way up on that list. But I almost think we've processed it out so much that we forgot to talk about who wins and who loses. And absolutely. We have a winner and a loser every day. In every drill that we can, every weight workout, we have a winner and we have a loser. And we talk through that. And I want you to know you lost. If you lost, we're going to let you know, brother, you just lost.
Absolutely.
That's how it went. how are you now going to, respond to that? What's your, what's going to be your thought process right now? Do you go pout? Do you make an excuse? Do you get your guys together and go, all right, this is how we're going to do it better next time. This is what we're learning from it. And I think it takes time, but you have to be wired that way too, to be able to accept accountability for that. That's like when we lose as a team, I lost. Okay. When we win, the kids won. And I think, you got to be wired to accept that and know that. But that's a big thing for me, creating competitive pitchers, is put them in positions over and over and over again to either win or lose. Understand why you won, because there's a reason you won when you won. You didn't just randomly, hey, I just hit the lottery. You did something really well. Or maybe you didn't even do it as well as you could and you still won. So let's work on why we can win by more or whatever it might be. But we've gone away sometimes from winning and losing. And it's a big thing for me, is you either win or you lose. And now that doesn't mean you're a loser, you're a bad person or anything like that. It means accept the consequences of your actions and let's go from there.
Yeah, you just I can only imagine Brandon is currently on the Hoover High School website ordering a Hoover baseball T-shirt because you just literally spoke to his truths in life, is about what happened to this idea that results are important, right? I mean, right. we it's one thing to your point, be committed to the process, but at the end of the day, it's because the outcome is so important is why you want to commit to the process.
No doubt.
And it is something I think, especially for those pitchers, I remember, one of the coaches we had on the show, we were talking about, just the charting, everything's about charts, of course, in baseball. And they were charting the responsiveness, response rate, for pitchers when it came to after you walk the guy, what do they do with the next hitter? After you give up a home run, what do you do with the next hitter? Once you get behind an account, what do you do with the next pitch? Everything is monitored to see who's the person that you're going to want to, how well are they going to bounce back and rebound? How are they going to respond to that adversity? And I think that's all of that goes into what you're saying there from that competitive DNA standpoint.
Yeah, no doubt. What I like to tell kids all the time, I still have yet to be in a knife fight. I hope I never have to be in a knife fight. But I like to tell them, through all we've done, the guy I want on the mound at the end of the game, in the biggest game, is the guy who I'd take to a knife fight with.
Sure.
And if those things match up, we're going to be in good shape. And there's a winner loser competitor all the time. You will hear, if you came to our practices, you hear guys talking smack to each other. It's good. I'm all for it, because I've yet to have a situation where when little Johnny and little Billy are jawing at each other in a bullpen and getting after it pretty good, but without saying anything terrible, but getting after each other, to not see little Johnny or little Billy support the other guy when he's out there on the mound. It actually has created more support in a game than less, at least in our experience. And I want our guys getting after each other. I want them pushing each other to the absolute max to create a situation where failure has consequence and success has consequence too.
But that's a tremendous job on your part, because what that tells me is that they feel safe there, right? Yeah. That hey, I can fail. I can fail in front of these guys, and I'll pick myself up, but they'll help pick me up as well. But I can kind of let them drop a little bit, because I don't have to worry about somebody talking about me or this is going to go viral when I fail, or all that kind of stuff. It's a safe place for kids. And I think, a lot of times that gets lost with a lot of parents too, when they don't understand that when you come up to the fence, that ride home, all the stuff that we're trying to do from a coaching perspective to give some direction and discipline and just that safe space, you're encroaching now.
Yes.
Right. And you're encroaching on them. And I don't know, Coach, I love to hear that that's the kind of atmosphere at a practice, because to me, the more that's going on, it just says, hey, this is a tight crew, right? This is a tight group of guys. Every team that I've ever been on, if you could bust balls, that was usually a pretty good team.
Yeah, I think it does indicate that. I think our guys are close for long periods of time after they leave. I think, you see them hanging out together a lot. Guys that maybe are around my team and around some other teams, they do talk about that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, you have to be open about what you're doing too. You're talking about, parents coming up a lot. We have parents come to practice, and a lot of coaches are scared of it. I don't want you necessarily with a phone out during practice, simply because if you're videoing, it has nothing to do with what's going to be said.
Yeah.
You're out there videoing, we're running a first third, and next thing you know, the whole world knows we're running. Like, I don't know about that.
Right.
If you want your kid, if you don't mind hearing your kid being coached, and we're not being derogatory kids or anything, we're going to coach, and we're going to get after them. Man, they might get after each other, and that's okay. Because at the end of the day, we're going to break it down. We're going to be friends. We're going to hug it out. We're going to move on. We even get to hug now. Used to during COVID, we couldn't even hug each other. Now we hug each other and all that stuff.
Yeah, couldn't even dap them up. No JID.
Couldn't touch and put on rubber gloves and everything else.
Well, I tell you what, I mean, we've talked about this a ton on this show before, is that deliberate discomfort. And I think everything you're talking about there from that competitive environment creates those uncomfortable situations so that players are now the game slows down for them, right? Whenever they're in those competitive situations or pressure situations. I heard, one of the USA guys say recently, of course, pressure is a privilege, and it's so true.
It is.
And it really does, though. And something I wanted to echo, but that you said there, is that it comes down to a want to. And I can't remember, and it always frustrates me, I can't remember what business book I read years ago. And one of the last chapters after, laying out this formula and this strategy and stuff was, you gotta wanna. That was the last chapter, was you got to want to. At the end of the day, like, you can know all these things, but you have to have a want to that is immeasurable in order to do that. And you talk about that knife fight line. I was thinking about this, and Brandon, I don't know if I've said this on the show yet, but one of my favorite posters I saw years ago, and I just thought it just makes me laugh every time, but it's so true, is it said, you have to fight like you're the third monkey on the ramp to Noah's Ark. And brother, it's about to rain. He said it's starting to rain.
So what I don't know is funnier is, one, the fact that you said poster, we automatically know that was a long time ago.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, are posters even around? And two, when did you start going to Spencer's in the mall?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no doubt. That was the place you went.
That used to be the jam.
If you weren't with your parents, you went to Spencer's.
If you had to, the parents could not come.
Yeah.
And if the parents asked you about it, you had to act like you did not know.
What are you talking about? I was at the food court.
I heard from a friend.
Yeah.
But what you brought up is one of, I think, I live in the land of Nick Saban and all those things, but one of his best lines, he's gone on rants about it, but it takes what it takes.
Yes.
It just does. Right. Like that. You watch, we're lucky enough to have some pro guys that come around in the off season. We've had a couple of guys drafted, all those kinds of things. It takes what it takes for those guys. They work incredibly hard. Every good hitter I've ever coached worked harder than other people. Every good pitcher threw more and studied more. Every good fielder took a ton of ground balls. You can break it up to this process and these beautiful periods in your practice plan, and we do a lot of all that stuff. But it takes what it takes. You got to put the work in, and our best players did what it took, and the ones who you thought were going to be good and weren't as good, they didn't do what it took. But that's probably where the art of coaching comes in too, is trying to make sure you get those guys motivated to do what it takes, because they're in today's day and age. There's a lot of distractions that'll take them away from what really they need to be working on.
Well, and it comes down to, and one of the things I think as a coach you have to remind players is that discipline's more important than motivation, right? Yes. And that commitment is more important than confidence. Like, those are the two things that at the end of the day, if you're disciplined and committed, then you're not waiting for motivation and confidence.
That's right.
Because those are the two things that if you have those, you're going to be able to accomplish a lot more. Because, and it's interesting, what is it Brandon has said on the show before is that isn't it interesting? The harder you work, the luckier you get, right? I mean, it's true. It's the good ones. They're putting in the work. They fall in love with the process and the preparation. It's why Nick Saban, after winning a national championship, will go out and recruit the next day or whatever the case. He's on the recruiting trail. It's like all these guys, Tom Brady, same way. They all just love that build up as much as the actual game itself.
Yeah. And it seems like he and other really, really good coaches put in or good programs. They've got these steps that everybody takes. It's things that have to be earned, and there's no way getting around to earning them. And we do it here. And there's things that you just have to do that, if you graduated from here, these other people, or if you say earn this shirt, you did something that other people maybe haven't done, or that anybody else who's got that shirt has earned it. Like in our weight room, you start every year off, every single year, with a plain white T-shirt, and that's all you get to wear. Nothing else. I mean, shorts and stuff.
Right.
You don't get to come in there, not the white shirt that says I was perfect game this or perfect. Turn that joker inside out. It's a white shirt, and you can earn the workout shirt that we have. And our workout shirt is based on the best, hardest worker we ever had here. He's not paralyzed from the neck down, but he's the hardest worker we had ever had. Wow. And we've got his name on it, his initials on our workout shirt every single year. And you got to earn it. And you walk in the weight room, and some people got a military green shirt on, and some people got a plain white shirt on. Earlier today, some had military green, some had plain white shirt. That's how it goes. And it just, that's just how it goes here. Where, you talk about Alabama football, they've got that fourth quarter program. Those guys will swear by the fourth quarter program. Mm-hmm. And you have to be, everybody has to have gone through those things. And so wherever it is, I think the good programs have got these steps that people have to take. They have to achieve them. And it almost is now like, now you're even more part of the brotherhood than you were before.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, and I mean, that's all part of that culture you've created there at Hoover. And that was, I saw a great picture online in one of your presentations with you and the team around that young man that was in the wheelchair. And you talked, it was part of your presentation on leaving your resume in the office, right? It's like nobody cares about all the things you said. At the end of the day, that picture is what it's all about. That's why we love coaching, is when we can see that kind of bond that has been created because of all of the competitive environment that you have put together there at Hoover, the DNA, all of the things that you're doing lends itself to that trust at the end of it, whether it's players trusting coaches, coaches trusting players, and players trusting each other. And man, I tell you what, Mose, whatever you're doing, brother, it's working. So I tell you, my son played football and is out of high school and college now, but I would have loved for him to play for you, because you're doing it right.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. We got a lot of, this place is a special place here. And we've had, everybody knows our old football coach, Josh Niblett, that was here. And they also know the one that was here before him. But we're not going to talk about it. But Josh is a tremendous man of faith, and he's gone over to Georgia now, retired in Alabama, and, was just part of setting the mindset of this place. And the mindset here is, doing things right and working really, really, really hard. And so, point of me bringing that up is it's supported, and it's just kind of the place where people they want to be part of success. And when you have a whole school that is generally bought into that thought process, it definitely makes you feel like you're just a small part of the puzzle and not just the puzzle, for sure.
Absolutely. That's great awesome. Last word. Well, we can't thank you enough for joining us tonight. We really do appreciate it. And, wish you guys the best of success, not only this year in high school, but, with Team USA and all of the other good stuff you got going on and up there on the big stage of ABCA. Congrats on that as well.
I appreciate it. I think, just hope I don't trip and fall, pull a, Tommy boy or something like that, walking out there. Maybe we tell some jokes, and maybe the ones who do make it back from lunchtime, in time, we'll hear maybe one or two things they can take from it. But I appreciate you guys having me. It's always fun to get to brag on our kids and our program. So I appreciate you letting me do it.
We appreciate it, Mose.
Thank you
so much.
You got it, guys.
Want to provide feedback or stay up to date with the show? Visit our Instagram page at Mental Advantage Podcast, or you can send us an email at podcast@mentaladvantage.net. To have John Cullen work with you or your team, please write to him at john.cullen@mentaladvantage.net. Thanks for listening to today's episode.